I'm just going to start by introducing one of our alumni who's joined us today to help me answer some questions and give you all a look into the insights of the career in the field. So this is Miss Divina Boyd. Divina, can you tell them a little bit about yourself, when you graduated and your time in, yeah, you got it.
No worries. Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Devonna Boyd. I graduated in psychology from Morgan in 2017, and then I did the master's in psychometrics and graduated in 2020. So that was roughly around COVID time. So it was a different process. So I'm not sure what things have changed thus far. I currently work at Center for Medicaid and Medicare, which is CMS, as a statistician dealing with analyzing fraud for Medicare practices. So I'm here to answer any questions, or if you have any thoughts about career paths, I'm also here as well.
Great. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, go ahead, Zara.
I had a question for Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
So do you work for Morgan State, or do you work at another company as a statistician?
Yes, so I work for, it's the federal government, so CMS, it stands for Center for Medicaid and Medicare. So it's a federal agency. So I don't work for Morgan, no.
Okay,
But my title is listed as statistician.
so if you don't like statistics, but you like psychology and biology, but you don't like math, how would you navigate working for the federal government for the correct amount of money, for like what you're interested in?
Well, even with psychometrics, statistics is a major part of, the program. So if you don't like statistics or don't like math, we might have to kind of gear you into another direction, which would kind of be like the research realm. Whereas where I started with, and I started at Johns Hopkins, doing research with my degree was, well, my kind of study was with autism and autism research and looking at the diagnostic exam and looking at the different criterias and biases that were related to the autism spectrum. So you could do the research realm if you were not necessarily into the statistics or the numbers. You could go with the research realm.
What
Yep.
if you hate doing research?
Hold on, Zara. Wait. Wait, we're jumping the gun a little bit. Thank you so much for your questions. But let me get into describing what the program is, and then I'll talk about, we'll all talk about the two different sides of psychometrics, which is what we're about to get into. And then at the end, well, throughout, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. And then I or Godwin or Divina will either respond back or we'll respond to you at the end, okay?
Thank you.
But before we start, I'm going to introduce Godwin, who is one of our current doctoral students. And he's also, I'm sure, at least a couple of you all's professor right now in Psych 316. So Godwin, if you would like to introduce yourself, your year in the program, and then also why you chose psychometrics, I think now is a good time for that.
Okay, my name is Godwin Umeobi. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student here at Morgan, and my research interest boils down on cultural responsiveness measurement, and specifically, I'm looking at originally my interest was hovering around developing and validating measures for use for a particular group or a particular cultural group. But then as I progressed in the program, I was I began to shift my grounds and also add some other things into what I was doing. And currently I'm working on survey effectiveness, trying out things that is going to make survey data collection effective. So working with my advisor on use of videos to collect data, survey data, and then my interest here at the moment is embedding symbols and icons in response options in video surveys to actually help to reach people who might, in one way or the other, who might not be literate, or who might have some other special needs, that the symbols will be able to help them to understand the options that are there in the responses. And other couple of things that I'm working on at the moment. And I chose Psychometrics program and Morgan because of my desire around data and measures. So it was, for me, the only aspect of psychology that satisfies my desire, because I kind of have play for data and numbers. And uh, from where I'm coming from, I had some challenges working on some projects, having issues with measures that were developed in different culture, and were just used for some projects in a different culture. And some of these pose lots of invalidity to the research that we've done in the past. And I was set out to find a way to get these things, get measures validated into specific cultures to serve the cultural people. That's why I had the original culture responsive measurement drive in my psychometrics research interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Godwin. And then Lucy, same thing, just a little more brief, because I do want to get into the topic about your year and then why you chose psychometrics. Unmute yourself, Lucy.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, my name is Lucy Okam. In my third year in the psychometrics program. To answer that question directly, I know there are several factors. First, I had my background in educational psychology. So when I got in there, the main aspect that really connects to me is the research and statistics part of it. I have to be sincere with that. Every other psychology was seem more like a theory. I needed things to do with my hands, and I always tell the story my friends knew. I almost dropped out of psychology class from the class because I felt there was no more challenge. I needed that mathematical part, let me put it that way. So I've always been interested in understanding learning, how individuals learn. So this was the motivating factor for me why I came into this psychometrics, because I saw it as a direct connection in giving me the tool to assess individuals, especially people with learning needs, so you know how to develop interventions for them. So let me just make it simple like that. So if there's any other question, I'll be open to answer.
Thank you so much. And then I see the question in the chat. I'm going to let that sit for a bit because I think we're going to answer that kind of as we go along. So I'm going to get into the presentation. So welcome everyone again. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your interest. I appreciate you showing up. So first, let's talk about what psychometrics is. So you've kind of heard a bit about different sides of psychometrics, but to make it simple, it's the science of measuring mental capacities and processes, which can sometimes still be like, what does that mean? The most simple way I've been describing it lately is it's just simply the study of tests and measures, right? So every time you have to take a survey, right? That's an important survey. So it might be the census, or it might be a test like the GRE or the ACT. Somebody had to decide what questions go on that test, right? To make sure you're understanding or they're comprehending the questions that they're asking you. And so where those questions go, the order those questions are in, how you word those questions, there's a whole science to figuring out how to do it in a way that's going to make you get results that are valid, which if you're in statistics right now, you can pick that up from one of your books. But basically, is it real? Is it determining the thing that we want it to determine? And so that's kind of the ins and outs of this. And there are two sides of that. There is an applied side that looks at kind of like what Ms. Boyd was saying in the statistician, where you're looking at a lot of the numbers and all of that. And then there's more of a theory or a research side that looks at, how would you say, either one of you, how would you describe kind of the difference between the theory and the applied? No, Devon or Godwin?
Oh, okay. If you want to talk about the applied psychometrics, you're talking about trying to apply the principles of measurement and all of psychometrics principles into answering research questions or dealing with industry-related matters about measurement, about program evaluation, about and not same with just talking about the focus on pure theories and not just about practical. So I think applied, we'll talk about more of the application. Someone who is in applied psychometrics might not have all the skills in all the areas, but applies all these together to answer questions or deal with industry-related problems in the areas of measurement and programs. And someone who has a theoretical knowledge answers just questions about the direct research and also maybe the statistical component and all that.
Right. So for instance, an applied person might work with the company, and that company has a question that they want to be answered. And so you just figure out how to build the test, right? And to get the answers that they want, right? So are their workers happy, right? Somebody has to decide how to measure what happiness means in that workplace. And so you would put that together, for instance. Whereas somebody who's doing the theory is kind of working in research and with the lab, and they're coming up with questions that aren't necessarily to answer one company's question, but they're to change the field as a whole to make it so the next person who has a question can now refer back to the question you asked and answered and make things better. Kind of like a long impact versus applied might be shorter impact and more immediate. And so this is kind of what we talked about. So high stakes testing, which could be if you are working with somebody who's a psychiatrist, right? The test that a psychiatrist use to diagnose their patients, whether that is for anxiety or any type of mental health situation, or even diagnosing autism, right? A psychometrician is the one who talks about what those tests look like. And our program is very specific because we're the only HBCU that has this program. And historically, this field hasn't been very diverse. It has not been representative of the communities that it impacts, right? So if you look at historically, how well do Black and Brown people do on the ACT, and then how many people are making the ACT, right? So one thing that we try to do is create a crop of people who can impact the field as a whole, since we're one of those few programs that has a bit more diversity. And so this field isn't something that just affects itself, right? Psychometrics affects education, mental health practices, and employment practices. And so if you're not, if you don't love psychology so much, this isn't something that's just about studying psychology and psychological theory. If you're interested in a lot of other things, it can be applied, right? And so like Devana was saying, she's a health statistician, right? So if you're interested in health, but you don't want to be a doctor and you don't want to be necessarily a therapist, right? But you want to have an impact on that field, there are ways for you to do that. And another thing that we focus on is something that Godwin spoke about earlier, cultural responsiveness, which is basically designing and validating instruments in a way that values cultural expression and embraces cultural differences. Now, what this means is the way you and I take a test might be different than the way somebody in Japan will take that exact same test, because the world that we live in is very different. So if I ask you a question, but I'm asking it in a way that you don't understand, I'm probably going to get a different answer than if you were to say it in the language that you use in your everyday conversation. So a lot of our students focus on, how do I make these tests that weren't made for my community in a way that they can help and benefit my community? And so some of our current projects are video surveys, which is what Godwin's, the lab that Godwin does research in. They work on doing surveys that instead of writing down all of your answers, you would be hearing and watching a video of somebody asking you the questions and then doing it on a screen. That's very new in this field. And so they're working on what that looks like in practice. Some of our other students are using virtual reality to look at spatial awareness, and instead of studying necessarily like mental health, they're studying how are people reacting to things and what questions do we ask them when they're reacting to things. So I think their most recent work was on fires and how people react when they're in like fires. And you can't put somebody in a fire, right? But you can put somebody in a VR scenario and then have them react to different things. Like, would you do this? Yes or no? Would you do this? And so that's another way that psychometrics can be used. And so the type of person who does well in this field is somebody who usually enjoys statistics or data, right? There's a lot of math. This is kind of like, we call it the STEM side of psychology. Like psychology is a STEM in general, but this is the STEM side. You're going to be doing a bit of math, and it's not always, so we had one of our alumni come and talk to the students recently, and it was like, even if you don't enjoy statistics, you should be able to understand it. Because even if you're not using it in your everyday practice, you should be able to explain things to a client in a way that shows that you understand it and you can help them understand the basics of it. Like, you don't have to be the person doing the in-depth analysis all the time, but you should have an understanding. So for the people asking, should I love stats? You don't have to love stats. A lot of our students don't love stats, right? But you should be willing to understand it and open to become better at it. You should be detail oriented, be able to collaborate with the team, organized, and naturally curious. A lot of what we do is ask questions and figure out different ways to answer them. If you like doing that, then this is a field that you should consider. So we have 3 different programs: a post-bac certificate program, which is online. We'll talk about that later, a master's program, and then a PhD program. So what makes our program unique? Like I said, our focus on culture responsive and applied methodology. So we're not just talking about, in theory, if you do something, where our students are using it in real time to answer questions and work on projects pretty much from the beginning of their time in the program. Emphasis on diverse populations in the applications, and then our students graduate and are able to go into careers in private industry, government, and academia. Like I said, there's a wide range of things you can do with this degree. It can be applied to many different fields. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of each program. So for the online post-bac certificate, it's designed for students who are either currently in school and need another certificate to kind of boost what they're already working on, people who are already in the field but want another certificate to help them advance, or for people who aren't ready to get a degree yet, right? So if you're looking to get better at your math and statistics so that you can then apply to another program, or if you're looking to test the waters, like this is something I think I might like, but I'm not ready to commit to the full thing, you can take 4 classes and really get a good overview of the type of work we do. And then the custom course sequence means that you're able to design it for what your specific needs are. And then we have our master's program, which has a thesis and a non-thesis option. So all students, when they come into our master's program, are admitted into the non-thesis option. We did this to help streamline it, make it quicker for students to get through. It's designed as a path to professional advancement or entry into the workforce. You have 4 semesters of full-time coursework, and then for the non-thesis option, instead of a thesis, you would have a capstone course where you complete a research project. And so this is something that you would choose the topic on yourself and make sure that it's already being applied to the type of field that you want to get work in. So you have something immediately when you're graduating to show people, I've done some work in this field, this is my level of expertise. Whereas on the thesis side, you'd have about 2.5 years, so 1 extra semester. Students apply for this during their second semester. So if when you're in the non-thesis track, you're like, actually, I really do enjoy this research, I want to do a bit more for my final project, you would then have 3 semesters of full-time coursework and 1 semester of thesis. So 1 or 2 depending on the speed, and that is for full-time. So common elements that are the same for the master's option and the doctoral option. Once you come into the program, you're automatically assigned an advisor once you're accepted. All of our students research no matter what level you're at, right? So that's in your coursework, you're going to be doing research, or you're going to be assigned a research advisor to do research with. You get an advisory committee, and then a lot of our students come in are able to use course waivers to waive a lot of those entry-level courses. So we try to work well with people so that we're not having them repeat. For our doctoral program, which a lot of our master's students do choose to go from master's to doctoral, it's 3 years of coursework that's specifically for if you've already done a lot of our master's work. And there's more flexibility. Some courses can be taken in other departments to give you like an interdisciplinary option. All of our students at doctoral level have to do a research apprenticeship and a internship as well as a dissertation. Even a lot of our master's students decide to do an internship, and you're able to get credits for that. It's a really good way to be able to get that experience that you need, to know what area of the field you want to work in and begin getting connections. So let's talk about funding, which I know a lot of people have questions about. So we have a few different options for funding. They are limited. So it's not a guarantee that if you are accepted, you will automatically get funding. But unlike a lot of other programs, we do typically fund the majority of our master's students. Now, I cannot guarantee that that is always going to be a fact, but right now I can say that the majority of our master's students are fully funded. And so our funding opportunities come in the form of graduate assistantships, which would provide some level of academic or administrative assistance throughout our offices, a research assistant, which supports a faculty member in research. Both Lucy and Godwin have assistantships right now. Lucy is a research assistant on an NSF project, which is going to be great for her resume. And then Godwin is a teaching assistant and is a full instructor of record, which is also going to do great things for his resume. So a lot of our students, we're making sure that while you're in school, you're not just going to class, right? You're getting the type of experience that you need. And then if you get an assistantship, you also most likely receive a scholarship to take care of the full-time graduate credits, which is 9. And then along with that, we also offer support for our students to do research and conferences, go to conferences. So I think this past year we sent about 5 or 6 students to different research conferences, and we were able to fund them. And so we take pride in being able to take care of our students during their journey. So while our program really does emphasize cultural awareness and responsiveness, it's a lot easier to do that when you have a lot of different students coming from different places. So we have students who are from and based in Baltimore, but we also have students who are from Saudi Arabia, countries throughout West Africa, and then I think there's one country that I'm forgetting, but all that to say that we all have global origins, and it makes for a community where you're able to keep people accountable with each other and being culturally responsive. Our students get prestigious internships either at Educational Testing Services, American Institutes for Research, or even the Census Bureau. And we're a highly competitive program, we would say. In the past, we've had students who have been White House HBCU scholars, which we're really proud of. So on to the different types of careers. So as you heard before, our alumni are health statisticians. Some of them are researchers. In Saudi Arabia, one of our alumni is a researcher at the National Center for Assessment in Higher Education. Some are data analysis and are able to focus on different fields like education. And then we even have alumni who have started their own companies. One of our alumni, Dr. Tamika Payton, while finishing her PhD program, started a company called Psychometrics Solutions, and it's doing really well. And I think every summer has one of our students on as an intern and has even hired alumni from our program. So like I said, there are a lot of different things that you can do with this degree. So what are we looking for in a student? Specifically for the master's program, we're looking for students to have at least the 3.0 GPA. Now I say that and I'll add a caveat. If you're at 2.9, 2.95, you can still apply, right? I think that it's worth applying, especially if you did well in your stats classes or your psych research classes. Those are the classes that we really focus on. You wouldn't be able to get funding that first semester, but once you get a 3.0 GPA, you're open for funding. We're looking for a student who understands the degree and understands what psychometrics is and what this field looks like, right? So do your research, do a couple Google searches, look up some research topics, some papers, read a couple, and see the type of work that people are doing. We're looking for alignment for somebody who is looking for a career that this degree is going to offer for, right? So if you come and approach us and you're looking for something that's clinical, I will send you a great list of clinical programs, right? But if you're looking for something that is going to combine psychology, combine data and stats and research, this is the perfect program for you. And then before I say that, I'll also just give like a little caveat for looking at research programs and a little bit of etiquette when reaching out to programs. I suggest that while you're looking at programs, if you find a program you're really interested in, reach out, right? Even just to introduce yourself and say, my name is this, I am interested in the program because of this, I'm looking at applying because of this. If you have a question, ask the question, right? Because if you're going to do one or two things, you're going to introduce yourself, they'll remember your name when they're looking at your application. And two, you'll be able to weed out programs that you're not getting a response from, right? If you send an email and never get a response from the program in that phase, you want to start to think about the type of support you're going to have while you're in the program. So that's just something to think about. Oh, sorry, let me go over this. So our application deadline for, well, our PhD application deadline is January 15th. The master's is May 1st. If you are a domestic student, if you're an international student, it is April 15th. And that's going to be on a couple other slides, and that's on our website also. However, if you're applying for the master's program, you can apply as early as today and know within 3 to 4 weeks. We have streamlined our application process to get those responses back pretty quickly. And so you don't have to wait until the deadline. It's almost better if you do not wait, because if I'm reviewing an application first versus if I'm reviewing it last and I have as many applications as possible, it's always early. It's great to be early, but you have until May 15th, May 1st. Okay, so which program should you apply for? If you are looking for a program to prepare you for graduate school or to help strengthen your application, the post-bac certificate is the option. I think if you're still trying to figure out exactly what you want to do, especially because we have a lot of quantitative and stats classes that can be used towards a lot of different degrees, the post-bac can set you up either for our program or even different programs, or even give you a great certificate to have on your resume. The doctoral program is best if you already have a quantitative degree at the master's level. So for our master's degree, we do, for our doctoral degree, we do require a master's because there's just a lot of background that would take you a lot more time if you don't already have some level of experience in the field. But for our master's program, you could come in straight out of a bachelor's program and then, yeah, use that towards whatever degree is next or whatever you would like to do next. So for our application, the main thing you have to do is submit a formal application via the School of Graduate Studies online portal. I have a link to that at the end, and it will also be in the email that I send out following this. 3 letters of recommendation for the PhD, 2 letters of recommendation for the post-bac or master's. For those things, make sure your letters of recommendation are from preferably professors, right? So other people in your academic career, yes, but preferably professors, right? So when you're applying for school, we want to hear from people at school. A writing sample, which should be something that you wrote by yourself. And then we have a 15-page single space or 7-page double space limit. My biggest suggestion is wherever you apply, read those application instructions, right? Because if you send in the application and I can tell you didn't read any or follow any of the instructions, that's telling me a lot about you as a student already, right? So if I ask for, so if something says 15, I have to cut you off at the 15th page. So if the best page you have is the 16th page, do that edit yourself and get that 16th page in, because nobody will see it because I have to cut it at 15. Same as your resume or CV, you should try to get those down to a page or two, especially if you're applying for the master's program. And then your personal statement. A personal statement, there are a lot of different ways you can go about it, but the main thing is why this program is right for you and why you were right for this program, right? And so if there's something, a lot of people use the personal statement to explain something that might not appear right. So if you have a 2.9 or 2.95 GPA, this is where you explain it. This is where you say, I could have done better at this. I can't wait to do better at that, right? And then for international students, there's the TOEFL language test also. So common problems, missing the deadline, right? So we have, because we give such a big period, especially for the master's students, I'm not able to extend the deadline. And that affects a lot of things. So funding, if you want to be considered for any assistantships or funding, you do have to submit by a deadline, because we have funding deadlines and other applications that have to be sent out. Like I said already, the letters of recommendation should be from academic or professional sources. And for your letters of application, make sure they're specific. I mean, letters of recommendation, make sure the person you are sending it to knows you're applying to this program and like names it in the letter. It makes a difference. And then for your personal statement, like I said, address your professional goals, research, and why you want to study at Morgan and why you want to study psychometrics at Morgan, not just in general, but why is psychometrics right for you? And then one more thing I'll say is make sure you have somebody read your personal statement. Make sure somebody who's not you reads it, and make sure not to use AI for it. We want to make sure you can write, and this is another way to make sure you can write. And so please keep AI to a minimum. So like I said, the timeline for masters is a May 1st deadline. You'll be hearing back within 3 to 4 weeks. All applications require some type of interview. So doctoral students do a full interview day with the admissions committee, whereas masters and post-bac students, well, post-bac students, there's no interview. Master's students will have just an interview with one of our program directors. And that interview is really just a conversation to make sure that your goals align with what this program is able to offer. After decisions are made, if we don't accept you, I hate having to say this, but we're not able to say why we can't accept you. So please don't take it personal. It's just a general email that we have to send out. If you are accepted, you then start filing for FAFSA immediately if you're applicable. And then we will send you out information about funding so you can apply and hear back pretty quickly. And then you'll be getting a lot of information from us. So just be looking at your emails. And that is all for the presentation. Now we can have some questions. I see some things in the chat that we should probably address. And then you can scan the QR code to start looking at the graduate school's application. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the questions in the chat. So Zara, I'm looking at yours. What if you want to be a doctor and not measure tests? Do you mean, explain a little bit more.
So my ultimate goal in life is to own my own doctoral practice for studying medicine and helping Black women.
Okay. And
well,
what
really,
type of doctor?
I want to be a one-stop shop
Mm-hmm.
for Black women to take their children, their husbands, anything a Black woman might need or need to be listened to, or anything a Black woman could need mentally. I want to provide that.
So that was my main thing. So kind of like a psychiatrist type situation.
Yes, exactly, a psychiatrist.
So one of our this is a good degree to have before entering a doctoral or like residency type of programs. One of our students who graduated last year is actually just entering a medical program. So it can be good, but there might be other options for you specifically. I think it depends on what you want your expertise to be in. And yeah, what would you say?
Psychiatry, like the medical practice of psychobehaviorism.
So I would say that's more clinical. So this would be, even if you do like because they didn't have the post-bac, they didn't have that when I started the program. So even if you wanted to have like the certificate for the post-bac, that would be your kind of step into framework to see if this is even a good program for you. But the way I'm hearing what you're saying about your career aspirations, I think clinical may be your best fit for that.
Right, because if you wanted to be the person who was the best in making sure that studies and tests were geared towards Black women, then I would say yes, right? If you wanted to be the person who's like, oh, here's all the mental health assessments and I had a hand in making these or making them better, then that would be what this program would be able to help you with. Whereas it sounds like you want to go a little bit more into the medical side of it. Okay. So then the next one I see, will there be a difference in pay in whichever route you take? Do you mean in terms of the assistantships? Daisha?
Sorry, I could not unmute my thing.
No, you're okay.
I was saying with like the whole so like the difference within research and like if you was to choose the research field or if you were to choose the other field. Sorry, yes. Yeah.
There can, but it depends, right? Because if you go applied, like I said, our alumni who runs her own Psychometrics company, and she works with different companies and has contracts with helping them with tests and all that specifically, she does pretty well, right? But there are also researchers who their research is really sought after right now because a lot of machine learning, a lot of AI, a lot of those things have a lot to do with psychometrics, and you can apply a lot of that and they're able to get really good grants. So I think you can do well with both. If you go into research, very often you're gonna need the PhD. More so if you go into theory is the PhD route. So there's a difference in time and when you want to be more in the career versus in school. So it would be, I think, less of a pay difference at the end and more of an investment in the beginning.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But you can also do applied with, like I said, the alumni that I'm speaking about, she has her PhD and she's more the applied route, but because she wanted to run a business and know both sides very well, she did the investment. So you can do well with either one.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then Zara, I see you asked about a 4.0. 4.0 is great. 4.0 is amazing. Anything above a 3.0 is great. We get a little iffy when it's under, but like I said, it's not, there are ways to work on it. And so even for instance, like if your GPA isn't exactly what you want it to be, a certificate can help with that, right? So if you enter a new program at Morgan, get a better GPA, that's your GPA now. right? That's your we take the most recent GPA. It could be any message that you have a good report with. Okay, thank you. Only, yeah, so when you do your letters of recommendation, any professor, yep, any professor. So yeah, if you did research with another person, they're a good option. But this is just, it's good to have a good rapport with somebody at your school as well. So if you have to, choose somebody here and somebody somewhere else, if that makes sense. Like there should be if you're at Morgan, you should be building a rapport with somebody here as well. And then Zara, are you asking about the name of the alumni that I keep talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I can send, it's Dr. You can actually Google her, she'll come up. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Were there any other questions? Thank you so much, everybody, for your participation so far. It helps when there are questions.
I do have a question for the students. Are you guys all psychology majors or different areas of majors? And you can put it in the chat if you don't want to go off mute.
I'm trying to think of questions that I get pretty often. I also want to say research can look however you want it, right? A lot of people I hear they hear research and they think of one one very specific thing, but I think most of our students, their research days look very different. So some people it's all on a computer and you're looking at numbers and you're looking at sheets and you're learning coding. And some of our students are in a lab, they have participants, they're bringing them in, they're doing trials with them. Some of our students are going to be way more interested in policy. So we have Dr. Nettles on the call, and he's looks at the policy of psychometrics and has worked a long time in that field in a way that isn't always, like we said, isn't always the numbers. There are a lot of different ways to interact with psychometrics. Anything else, guys? I'm trying to make sure I answer your questions, but I don't want to take up more time than I have to.
I have a question.
Okay.
What I would want to do is I'm looking at going into the forensic psychology field. So I wanted to know, would psychometrics be useful for that? Because I know there's a program, the forensic psychology program, master's program, but would psychometrics help a little bit with that? Or
so my opinion, because I think psychometrics could help, but I don't know that it would necessarily be, because like you said, there are forensic psychology's master's programs. So what you could always do is look and see if wherever you decide to look at, if they have quantitative psychology courses that you could take as electives to go with your program. So each master's program is going to have a certain number of electives that you can take, which could be a good way to use, because I do think it's always good to know what's going on with like whatever results you're looking at or whatever analysis you're looking at and what this means. I think that can help in any aspect of psychology. I think it helps when you're reading and you understand what a paper is saying. And I think that's a lot easier to do if you understand how tests are made and how they're looked at. But again, like I said, since there's already forensic psychology programs, it would just depend on what you want your specialty to be.
Okay, thank you.
Godwin?
All right, I would say, if you were a forensic psychologist, you're not going to answer any question without resorting to testing. Assessment will be involved. So when they announce, when the assessment is involved, we have a knowledge of psychometrics or measurement. It's going to be an added advantage to you in the field. I'm not saying you're going to take that course for that, but then if you have a knowledge of psychometrics, maybe through the post-bac program or any other way, but what Joyce said, if you see any quantitative psychology course as an elective in the university where you are doing your master's, it's going to be helpful to you. Because if you have knowledge of testing, knowledge of assessment, which is one of the things you're going to learn from psychometrics program, it's going to be very useful if you are pursuing a program in any other field, even if it's forensic or clinical or counseling or organizational, any field of psychology is going to be very helpful to you because the strength or the authority you have in answering questions in any other fields is how well you understand how to assess all these variables. All psychological constructs are abstract. So your knowledge of how to assess these constructs is anytime a good asset for you in any field of psychology you are measuring.
Right. I agree. That's a really good point. And I think this is where the post-bac comes into play, right? And why we're like, this can help you advance, because in general, this is a smaller field in psychology. So being one of the few people who has a great insight into it is always going to be a bonus, especially when you are a Black and brown person, right? And so being able to look at something from a lens of your community and then add in your expertise is always going to help. Stuff because statistics are, I'm looking at the chat. So Maya said, it sounds like psychometrics is more useful to provide background for stats, coding and stuff because statistics are involved in literally any field. So it sounds like getting a master's or doctorate is mainly beneficial if you want to go into revising the creation of the test and stuff, but regardless, getting the post-bac or possibly the master's is probably the way to go. Yes and no. Yes and no, because some people, psychometrics is their field. Like it can be applied to all fields, but for instance, we have a research center on campus where we have a few people who are psychometricians. That is their job title. And so because the creation of tests helps other fields, but it is also a field in itself. So if you want to do the field in itself, that's when you would get the doctoral and have that be your, but also the doctoral can be, I think the different levels is less about what you want to do with it and more about the level of expertise you want to have, right? So a master's is an entrance expertise, right? You know how to apply it, you know how to use it, you know a bit of the theory behind it, whereas the doctoral is like, I am the expert. You pick your, whatever your different strength is. So there are a lot of different types of psychometrics. Like we could get into a Rosh versus an IRT conversation, which are specific to kind of like research. But those are things that people spend their whole life working on, is developing theory. And then the rest of the field is trying to make it better. So it can be background. It absolutely can be background and supplemental, but it also can be the field that you want to work in. Does that make sense, Maya? Lucy, go ahead.
Okay, I want to say something that I would draw on all what Joy have been saying and everyone have contributed. Like, I know sometimes we start a journey, I will make this clear, navigating career is a very difficult thing. Studying psychology provides a basis to dive into any field you want. I want to state, I know sometimes a lot of us think the only field in psychology is clinical psychology. A lot of students come up with this mindset and they feel everything is all about clinical psychology. I want to state that with psychometrics, why it can be applied in different areas of psychology. When we use the word psychometrics, the metrics is what we are focused on in psychometrics. When we talk about the metrics, that is the measurement part of it. And I want to state something. There's a difference between the work a psychometric does and the work a statistician does, because sometimes we get this mixed up. a statistic or a statistician can do your analysis, everyone can do it. A lot of you do data analysis. But what makes it different from the psychometrics is the measurement component. We measure. You want to measure an attribute, whether it's behavior, whether you want to dive into child care. This is one key thing we're talking about. I had some friends were talking about this yesterday. It can be applied, like someone would say she's in the RBT. It can be applied intensively there. So all you have to look at is, as I know sometimes we go through this process, we try to discover ourselves and propose what we really want. Is a journey. If you still look at, you want to go into, there's what we call organizational psychology, it can be applied there. What do? If you tell yourself you want to be sure of fair selection of employees, you want to give everyone an equal selection in an organization, this is what psychometrics do too. We look at how do we select the best candidate for a job. Psychometrics go into that. So let's not be looking at just one aspect of it, mental health, there's a whole lot. I remember someone, I introduced myself to a Morgan here that time in psychometry. It was like, oh, that is great. Why don't you come into the business school and go into market research? It's a key area you can dive into. It's wide. It's wide. You can just look at consumer behaviors. You might ask yourself, how does it, it's so deep into it. Because you can help companies or set up your own company where you look at customers' buying habit and all that, and it's market research, you mustn't study market. All you just need to do is to get the basis. Then even if you need a special training just to understand the dynamics or the language in that particular subfield or field, all you just need to ask yourself, where do I want to go to? Sometimes it's not clear, but you keep revising and keep revising. At the end, you get a sense of direction. But you should look at the broader goal. Where will I be tomorrow in the next 5 years? Then a key thing I want to mention, the world is going into a data economy where data is the center of everything. And that is a big key for everyone to advance in the next few years. Even if we know AI will come out, what role can you play in the advancement of this AI and all that? So with psychometrics, you see that psychometrics are the center because we're not just analyzing data, but we're giving measurement to everything. So I want us to look at it that way, and why you can do also additional research, not just being limited to what is being presented to you there. So you dive deeper and really see where you want to go. It can be applied in education, different ways. So that is just it. So.
Right. No, I think that's a really good way to frame it and look at it, as every office can have a psychometrician on staff. Like there is something for a psychometrician to do in every office, but also a psychometrician can have its own office, right? And so it's, yes, you can go into another field and do similar things, but a psychometrician is always going to be able to get a little deeper into the nitty-gritty of what's happening, and that is becoming a lot more valuable with the more data that we have. And so like I think a lot of people are kind of might be looking like, oh, what's the difference between me getting this and a degree in data science or a degree? It's not only being able to look at the data, but it's being able to get the data and make sure it's good data. Good data is really hard to find. And being a psychometrician is all about making sure you're able to get good data that means what you want it to mean. And how can we make that data better, right? In the future, when we go to get that data again. So there are a lot of different ways. And I think trying to decide whether this field is for you is very much like what Lucy said. In 5 years, what does that look like? A lot of people right now, I think, are looking at degrees like, will I be able to pay my bills in a few years with this degree? And nobody can guarantee that, but it's very likely, right? With the way that the field is going. And so I think that's a great place to end off, unless we have any last questions. And if you think of anything else, you can always email me. Most of you got an email or invite from me. It's joy.grant@Morgan. I'm open for any questions. Me and Dr. Nettles are usually right on it with these emails. So if you have a question about specifically whether this makes sense for you, send that over. We'll have a conversation. or if you're just looking for resources to find out more also. I'll be sending out an email with some different links and some stuff. Oh, I should have put our social media on here. We're posting a lot on social media right now that answers a lot of questions and has some different students talking about their testimonials and the type of work they do. So on Instagram, we are on Instagram and YouTube. I'll put it in the chat. But if nobody else has any questions, thank you all so much for showing up. Thank you all for asking great questions and having a good conversation with us. It's very helpful to know the types of things that you want to know. I will be sending out this recording. So if any of your friends weren't able to make it, send it out to them. I'll also include the slides. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing your applications. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you to our graduate students and alumni for showing up. Couldn't have done this without you. Thank you as always.
No worries. Thank you. And Joy, if you have any other questions or need me, you have my email, and just email me for anything.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care, everyone.